It was sorry, but rules were made for the protection of customers, as well as for the protection of the bank, and furthermore, were not made to be broken. Clavering left the bank. It was past noon, and he had had nothing to eat since his prison breakfast. He hadn't had a drink for 6 months, and had had nothing to smoke in that period but the vile, acrid prison tobacco. He considered walking to the address that the doctor had given him, but it was on the other side of the city, and there was, too, the possibility that the fence would refuse to advance him the money for his immediate requirements. Anyhow, Clavering had his pride, and he didn't like fences, and hated to place himself under any obligation to one. It was lucky, thought Clavering, that he had never become a specialist. He could crack a safe, or forge a signature, or pick a pocket knot. Of course, with the best practitioners of these various arts, but with, he prided himself, the second best. The present situation called for pocket picking. He began to look around him for a likely mark. A prosperous-looking fat man was window shopping nearby. Clavering ran a trained eye over his clothing. The shirt was Alteron Cristo silk, and Alteron Cristo silk is not among the cheaper textiles. The jacket was one of the finer, more expensive tweeds from Nova Caledon, and the kilt and stockings obviously came from Scotland itself. Clavering wondered if the fat man had any right to wear the Clangrame tartan. The shoes had that sheen peculiar to leather, made from the hides of the great fish lizards of the Marcara swamps. The bulge under the jacket was almost certainly a well-filled wallet. Clavering waited until the fat man was staring into the window of a delicatessen, well stocked with gastronomical temptation from a score of worlds, before making his approach. He sauntered up to him, and said, "Pardon me, have you the time? My watch is being repaired." "13, replied the other. "Affably enough. Quite a fine display, isn't it?" said Clavering, nodding towards the window. "Of course some of these things don't travel too well. The only way to eat witchetty grubs, for example, is to pick them straight from the hot ashes onto which they've been dropped alive and squirming. ... double quotes, I've never been to Earth," said the fat man. "Next year, perhaps. But I always say that I can have a cruise of the galaxy whenever I feel like it, in my own kitchen." "What's that stuff there?" asked Clavering. "That opalescent jelly in the fancy jar. It comes from Windhever. Have you ever been there?" "No, neither have I, but, thanks to my hobby, I know plenty about it. At certain seasons of the year and seasons that are rather complicated, as they're bound to be in a binary system, the big sea spiders come ashore and build nests among the rocks with secretions from their butt." When he had heard enough to make him resolve that no foodstuff from Windhover would ever find its way onto his table, Clavering asked the time again. He excused himself, saying that he had an appointment. "Ewardi Hawaii. Not too fast, and not too slow," putting several corners between himself and the fat man. He arrived eventually in a small park. He found a vacant seat. The day was fine and warm, and most of the office workers there were eating their lunches on the grass. He pulled his prize, the precious wallet, out of his pocket. It wasn't a wallet. It was a cigar case. Anyhow, thought Clavering, he would have a quiet smoke before doing anything further. He took one of the fat cigars, held it appreciatively under his nose, then lit it with the lighter that was part of the case. Eat, tasted, odd. It wasn't unpleasant. It was most definitely good. Its oddness was probably the result of having his palate ruined by the chopped straw and horse droppings that went by the name of tobacco in the central jail.